Hey everybody, I'm Michael Monaco.
And I'm Bobby Salveson, and we are the Hazmat Guys, bringing you the knowledge and insight to make your job a little bit easier and safer. But before today's show, let's listen to our sponsors. Hey guys, did you know that CBRNE Convergence is heading back to Orlando from the 6th to the 8th of November 2018, bringing you 3 days of workshops, lectures, and interactive sessions delivered by speakers from around the world on the latest issues and approaches to CBRNE and Hazmat. This year's pre-conference workshop is on mass fatalities, a must for first responders. To register for the visits, go to cbrneworld.com/convergence 2018. Hey guys, you've heard us talk about Dahlgren Decon and its effectiveness on fentanyl, chemical warfare agents, and ticks and TIMs. Firstline Technology has launched a new Decon field guide app for your iPhone and Android device. It has a complete threat library and explains Dahlgren Decon functionality against bulk contamination and contaminated surfaces. It also has complete instructions for mixing and applying Dahlgren Decon, as well as reactivity concerns, suggested ratios, and dwell times. Download today on the Apple App Store and coming soon to Android. Hey everybody, we have a great episode coming up today, but before we start the show, we want to share some exciting news from the Hazmat Guys. As some of you may know, we have been working on a hazmat drill book for quite some time, and we're pleased to announce that it is finally available on Amazon. This book was written by contributors from the hazmat community based all around the United States, and we think it will provide a ton of value for both you and your department. The title of the book is The National Emergency Response Hazmat Drills, 50 Drills to Improve Your Team, better known as NERD. No, this was not a mistake. Anyway, the goal of the book has been to help the hazmat community, and we hope that you'll take a moment to check it out and share it. We have the link in the show notes, and if you have a moment, please leave us a positive review in Amazon. We'd be very grateful. We wanted to get NERD on the bestseller list and give more exposure to our community. Again, the book is called National Emergency Response Hazmat Drills, 50 Drills to Improve Your Team, and there's both a paperback and Kindle version available. Thank you, everybody.
Now let's get into the show.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Hazmat Guys. Today we are continuing our series on hydrofluoric acid or hydrogen fluoride, depending on how and what you find it in. And we've done something a little bit different with this series. We did a basic educational series on it, and then for the most part we're getting some information from people that have been out there and have experienced it and have done things with it. So today we are doing a little interview with... Hold on. All right. You know, we're always sitting and we're telling you, hey, if you want to come on the show and be anonymous, you totally can. We all understand that there's social media policies out there. We all understand that my department doesn't want me talking about this. They don't want to be embarrassed over something that happened, but I want people to learn from what I'm doing. Well, here's a perfect example. This gentleman, who's going to remain nameless, came on the air, did an interview, and then afterwards said, hey, my department wants it to be anonymous. I can't indicate who I am or who they are, so I need to make this anonymous. Well, that's what we're doing. You are not going to hear this gentleman's name. His voice has been changed a little bit, and his location is going to remain secret. So from this point out, if you hear social media edit, then that is exactly what it is. Information has been taken out for social media editing purposes. All right. Who is going to... he comes from industry, if I am correct.
That's correct.
And is going to kind of give us an industry point of view, which is kind of a really... Especially for first responders. We do get some industry guys that listen. But for first responders, it's really good to know... while we're responding into one of these facilities, that there is a plan in place, that there are people there that know what they're doing and that can assist us and have seen things that maybe none of us have. So with that, social media edit. Tell us a little something about you.
Yeah, my name is...
Social media edit.
I have been in the first response and industrial emergency response community since... about 1994 when I became a volunteer and started in
social media edit.
And then I was fortunate enough to have a degree in
social media edit.
And I've been very fortunate to work in a number of different industries from nuclear to chemical to pipeline. And now I'm in the
social media edit.
My hazmat experience has been dealing with specialty hazards in all all of those different types of industries over the years, and I look forward to being able to share a little bit of knowledge I have from a brief stint in the about 3 or 4 years in the petrochemical industry that had HF at one of the alkalization units in a large metropolitan area in the East Coast.
So what was your role with the HF?
My role with the HF is we were part of a corporate fire protection engineering group with the refining company, and one of the elements we were always tasked with is understanding the emergency response and the mitigating response measures that we have at our target hazards, and clearly having HF in an alkalization process in a large East Coast city. And near all that, obviously they wanted to make sure that the response measures were proper and adequate. And in that HF area, there's a lot of people can do research on there, so everything I'm talking about is not going to be proprietary. But the biggest thing you need to be doing when you have an HF release or any sort of type of toxic corrosive gas is you want to try to use mitigation in these areas. There have large water monitors stationed around the unit that can be activated and remotely controlled, or they're preset on a pattern just to start spraying water in a lot of different areas to to mitigate that potential vapor or gas release of the HF should there be an upset condition. And fortunate enough, they were I don't even think there was one while I was working in that industry at that location, but they're always there and ready to go and be prepared to enact those actions before the first responders come on site, because you don't want the first responders to have to come in and really do anything. You want to be able to make sure you can take care of stuff in house and immediately reduce the exposure to the environment and also the people around the area.
And that's a pretty standard protocol among industry, right? Where the team itself does everything they can to minimize the need for somebody external to come in and actually deal with the stuff.
Yeah, I would say in certain target hazards, that is the approach. You kind of want layers of protection. As we all know in the fire and emergency services and hazmat community, the sooner that you can mitigate the incident, the better it is for everybody. It's kind of like time, distance, and shielding with radiation. If you can quickly get rid of whatever's going on or secure it in a way to where allow you to do other measures, i.e. hit a remote shut-off valve or close something in or open something up or vent or scrub, whatever you need to do. I mean, that's the whole point. You have those teams that they can quickly react. You have those physical installations and mitigating measures and engineering controls and a whole entire hierarchy there in order to give you that full layer of depth. And then the last is, bringing outside first response agencies in, because if we don't have to expose them to what's going on, clearly that's what we want to be doing from a good steward within the industry, from a social license to operate standpoint.
So what would be some of the mitigating protocols that industry would have in place? If I was a first responder and I was called in, what are some of the things that I could have expected already to have happened before we get called in?
Well, I think the first is the detection of the release, either through an operator walking around and seeing, it being released, or detection or monitoring equipment, activating and indicating that there was some type of atmospheric disturbance, we're sensing something in this area, cameras, people going to cameras and then turning on these mitigating systems, so that's what you would do from a hard asset standpoint, a type of a release situation. And then if you had a person in a type of an exposure, then that standpoint is making sure that you get them rinsed down, washed off, treated with the cream that you also get associated with an HF type of a work environment, and then hopefully that they're getting ushered on quickly, to further medical care. So EMS comes in to make sure that they're decon, they're treated, ready to go, and then take them to higher medical care. But from a first responder coming in, one, you're going to be treating either a patient or a piece of property. It's either P or P, it's a patient or property. And if it's property, then hopefully all of those mitigating factors come into play. Now, with mechanical systems and other systems like that, there could be failures. So they may have to come in and provide a water supply. They may have to come in and provide a water monitor, or bring in, an aerial unit and decide to get it with a master stream to help, specifically target an area. Because as we all know, even with fire apparatus, things don't work some days, even though there's constant tests, there's constant inspection, and constant training on the stuff. Sometimes things don't work. Yeah. So as a first responder coming in, you might have to come in and support that.
Everything goes wrong at the worst possible moment.
And it's Murphy's Law.
It is. It works wonderfully, too. What are some of the precautions from an industry point of view? So, we look at it from a first responder point of view, especially me, as something that I will probably maybe only deal with a couple times in my career. But when you're looking from protocols and procedures and how you deal with something from an industry point of view. You're talking about things that are set up because people are dealing with this stuff on a fairly regular basis. So what are some of the procedures and protocols that stood out that made HF a little bit different than other chemicals that were used?
Well, I think you kind of have to look back and go, the first question is, why is it being used, and understand the chemistry behind it. I think, a number of topics that have been talked about on the podcast and in, the ISE conference over the last couple of years, is people are starting to talk more about understanding the chemistry. And as the hazmat community, as first responders, we need to understand the chemistry and why is it there. Once you understand why it's there, then you can start understanding, okay, why are you actually going to be needing it and using it? So you asked a question about, what policies and practices and procedures out there. I think the first thing you got to look at is that things are designed in a way to keep the genie in the bottle. Okay, we don't want that to come out. We don't want to get in the environment. There's a cost loss. I mean, there's all these other things. You're trying to make an end product to sell to a customer, or some type of market that's in desire or whatever it is you're trying to make. And so it starts off with the engineering. Okay, you want to design these systems to be very robust. You want to inspect, test, and maintain these systems so you can have a high degree of operability. Because operability is good because downtime is bad. That's where you actually lose money. So a first responder coming in, the first thing you got to understand is that these systems are designed and maintained in order and a way to keep these things going. Now, does that apply to every operator everywhere in the world? No, it doesn't. I think we've all been exposed. We've all seen, stories and news and incident reports that, hey, things go wrong or things aren't done well or things aren't maintained well. That's life, okay? And it's not an aspersion on anybody or anything, but that's just the truth, as we all see it every single day. So the first responder, you come in, you understand it, and then, okay, well, what do we do if something does happen? Well, that's where you get into your consequence modeling, and you get into your mitigating actions, and you start building a bunch of layers in defense. So if we're talking about HF, it's okay. We design our systems to have really thick wall pipes. We make sure the metallurgy is correct, so you don't have a degradation of equipment being exposed. There's a lot of research that goes into what can you and can you not use with an HF or any specialty chemical type of an environment. Okay, so it does release. Well, then you have detection. You want to know that it's going on. You want to be doing inspections. You want to be doing rounds. Then you got monitors or some other type of mitigating system that goes off in order to keep that it's localized to an area. And then you have certain procedures that you walk through saying, okay, shut down this pump, close this valve, dump this to this tank, whatever it may be depending upon the system in operation. Then after that is hopefully take care of the incident, and then there's really no more incidents localized. You keep it in-house. But then again, there's the times where what do you do when things don't work? Okay, that shutdown valve didn't open, or that valve didn't close properly, or that monitor didn't work. That's when you see the first responders needing to come in and also assist with those mitigating actions.
So what kinds of you would what's the best way to kind of think of this follow-up question? You would almost expect as a first responder that when you're making an entry into an industrial facility, that everything has already been detected and steps have already been done to try to stop whatever's stopping, and you're really there because whatever they tried to do wasn't done. And hopefully as an entry team, you're almost going to be expected to be making an entry with somebody who actually works from that facility, knows what's going on, and can kind of go through what has already transpired.
FLIR, a global leader in CBRE and detection, announces a new version of the Identifinder R200 spectroscopic personal radiation detector that now detects and identifies neutrons in addition to gamma radiation. Neutrons penetrate material and travel far greater distances than any other form of radiation. A neutron detector has a better opportunity of detecting neutrons before any other associated type of radiation. This capacity provides an early warning to malicious material and provides a vital situational awareness to the user. This ruggedized, pager-sized detector can be mounted in a vehicle or worn for 24/7 radiation monitoring. While being worn, the Identifinder R200GN operates like a personal radiation detector, alarming when radiological hazards are detected. Responders can also use this device to perform isotope identification to help make safe and informed decisions. The Identifinder R200GN enables responders to determine whether a detection is a true threat or something a little more benign in nature. The R200GN uses the same Identifinder interface that responders have come to know, making it a seamless addition to the response toolkit. Find out more about the FLIR Identifinder R200GN by visiting www.flir.com/R200.
Is that relatively fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good statement. If I understand exactly how you're saying it, is that some places may have a few people on a team. Some people may have a lot of people on a team. So you may be going on scene and needing to assist. I can think of in the news recently some of these large ammonia releases with warehouses. Well, the site may have a team. Those people are highly trained, highly educated. They know the products inside and out. They know exactly what to do. So that's the first benefit as a first responder coming in, and hopefully being a good steward of the consumer relationship between the first responders and the private sector and industry is you've already established that relationship. You're not meeting them the first time on game day. That's always a bad place to be. So hopefully you already have that relationship. If you don't, you don't. If you do, great. So you understand that these people are dealing with it every single day. It's kind of like the common homeowner. We're not going to come in and tell you how to fight the fire because that's what the fire department does. You're not going to tell an EMS person how to save someone from a gunshot wound because that's what they do every day. Same thing. First responders come in. They hopefully be able to hopefully have a little bit of a knowledge and understanding of what's going on. But yes, they'll be working alongside with other individuals there and to get that knowledge and experience to understand exactly what it needs to do. So again, they may be coming in and supporting an operation that could be a real long duration. I mean, maybe they've exhausted all of their people. Maybe they've exhausted some of their contractors. You might need those first responders to kind of come in, dress up, go down range, and help with that. But hopefully I answered your question.
You saw as having to manage these chemicals, people didn't just come into contact with these when there was an emergency, right? People in industry, they come in contact with these materials on a fairly regular basis through cleaning and maintenance, correct?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, any system that's mechanically operated has times when maintenance is done. And, in the oil and petrochemical industry, typically those are called a turnaround. And during the turnaround, you prep for it and then you go oil out or product out, the different terminology used in different sectors. And then once that's done, then work crews come in and they start basically disassembling and repairing items needed repaired or do further testing on items to determine something may else need to be repaired. And on occasion, sometimes even during that abnormal operation condition or during just maintenance, you might get exposure to it. I remember one case when I was in the petrochemical industry. I'm an individual working on an HF unit where simple maintenance activity, the unit is shut down, they're flushing, they're draining. There's a little bit of a residue or, in the piping that they were taking apart because people are in, there's a full-blown hazard analysis and, what kind of PPE do you need to wear and what's going to be the work practice. And if there's an exposure, then there's a protocol to follow. And the individual said, during the time they're working, they're like, hey man, I feel something in my arm. And what they're told is if you feel any burning, any weird, strange feeling anytime while you're working, get out of the work area and report it because we don't want someone to have an exposure to any hazard material chemical, especially HF, because of its ability to really wreak havoc on the human body. And in this incident, someone started complaining, hey, I've got this burning weird feeling on my wrist. They backed out and they immediately washed them down, cleaned them up, got them treated, and sent them on to higher medical care. And I had a similar incident when I was working for an offshore oilfield services company where a product or material got in, same thing, highly corrosive. They said, hey, something doesn't feel right on my hand. They had a little tear in their glove, didn't know about it. Boom, got them cleaned up, got them treated, and sent off for further medical care. So yeah, there's a lot of rigor that goes into this to making sure that people are doing the right things, before work gets done. Now, we all see in the news are examples of operators and people who don't follow all the rules and steps, and that's when really, really bad things happen. But in my experience with the companies I work for, I was always fortunate to work for companies that always made sure that all the steps were properly planned out to prevent people being exposed or the environment being contaminated from the products and materials that they worked on.
Do you remember at all what the decon procedures? Do they have any special decon procedures for the HF as they did any other chemical, especially with it being such small amounts? I wonder if we as first responders, we kind of tend to think of everything as that kind of car wash model where we get in, we hose ourselves down, we scrub ourselves off, we then take off these dripping wet garments. Was HF different at all, or was it pretty much the standard decon procedures for these guys that would come in contact with it regularly?
Yeah, it's been a while, so I don't fully remember all that, but I would just think with any type of an acid I mean, you're going to want to, depending if it's emergency decon, if it's a mass contamination, you're obviously going to want to wash, wet, get them out of the clothing, and then treat them for, chemical burns or whatever, type of exposure that they may have. I believe in the case of the company I was working with, I believe it was, rinse the area. And it wasn't like people were exposed all over their body. It was like a certain area, typically like a tear or where they were sealed around their PPE or, where it was close to them. Sometimes that's where you get exposed. So it wasn't that, they're drenched totally in it, and covered in it. So you get them out, you get them rinsed off, you wash all of it off the best you can. And then, the water obviously goes into containment basins. I mean, this stuff just doesn't go into a storm drain in and out the road. Any of these areas that have these highly hazardous materials in it, they will have their own separation areas, or if not, they'll drain and be pumped into special tanks to where they can be further neutralized and taken care of. So something I probably forgot to mention earlier, but yeah, rinse them down, wash them down, and get them treated with whatever their proper response protocol is for whatever the exposure may be.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing that I learned teaching in industry, is that a lot of the, they have these wells, and they're all kind of connected to a main tank, that they don't just go to the sewers. And a lot of times they don't even set up pools to capture water from decon or anything like that. They just let it go into this catch basin type system, and then they deal with the whole mess later.
Yeah, I mean, most of your chemical plants will some of them, at least all the ones that I've been to, have always had some type of wastewater treatment system. So either through neutralization or separation or whatever it may be, and then they can discharge, as their environmental permits allow, either treat or not, or they just simply contain it into an area, and then they'll bring in an environmental cleanup contractor, and then they'll take it to a spot, a proper place, and treat it and do what they need to in order to meet the disposal requirements for the permits that they have associated with the product. Right.
So that's always a kind of a something to think about if you're ever in one of these chemical industry areas, is that, it's not like being on the street in the road. This product is going to go somewhere. It is going to be contained, and it may just be one less step that, we as first responders have to take in getting ready to be deconned and cleaned up.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. Again, it's if you're doing my operation in the back of a rented out warehouse, I may not be following all the proper codes and practices and procedures, so you may not have all of those, all that infrastructure there to do it. But your proper and responsible operators, will understand the needs and from their permit standpoints. And again, they're socialized to operate. They want to be good stewards in the community. They'll have should have all of those systems and features in place in order to prevent those things from happening. So,
did the personnel dealing with the HF, did they have to go through special training specifically for the hydrogen fluoride? Because I believe it's one of those special chemicals, right? Where it's like if you have a certain amount of this, then you have to have X, Y, and Z in place.
Yes, the all of the companies I've ever worked for always made sure that the individuals that were operating or working around or handling especially types of materials, HF being one of them for our topic of conversation, did go through the proper training. I remember there was a couple classes, I had to go through. You had to understand what it is, how does it work, what it is, why it's hazardous to the human body, why you don't want to have it, what are the signs and symptoms of exposure, and then also to properly report anytime that you have an injury or incident. And really, in a lot of the industries, it doesn't really matter what you're doing. If you at all have an exposure or something spilled or released or something on fire, you always need to immediately sound the alarm, the proper notification number, to get the right internal resources responding and coming in order to mitigate, address and then obviously mitigate whatever is going on. So yes, there was training that the operators did have to take. And again, the operators have to be trained as well to know what the ins and outs, the proper operating characteristics of their units were.
Very good. Well, I can't think of too much else to questions to ask about HF in the industrial.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and share a little bit of the limited knowledge I have. Appreciate what you guys are doing for the community, and I hope more people come up and get on the show and start spreading some more knowledge. So again, appreciate all that you and Bobby are doing.
Thank you, my friend.
If you have a moment, please head over to iTunes and leave us a positive review. And don't forget to check out the book, National Emergency Response Hazmat Drills, or NERD, on Amazon.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the Hazmat Guys.
You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and our YouTube channel at The Hazmat Guys. And take a moment to call our comment hotline at 843-628-1484 and go to www.thehazmatguys.com and sign up for the newsletter.
We seriously look forward to your feedback about any of the information provided, and we also want to hear about interesting incidents that you were a part of. So you can send us a note at feedback@thehazmatguys.com. And remember, any of the information that you share with us, if we put it on air, can always remain anonymous.
Remember, guys, don't just get on the job. Get into the job.